Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Victor Hogrefe. He's the co-founder and chief business officer at EonLabs. Victor, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing at EonLabs and all the stuff we're talking about is very innovative and cool and very timely. But maybe before we get into all that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
For sure, yeah. I grew up in Germany,
Okay, very cool.
but had lived previously in Canada when I was very, very young. But mainly grew up in Germany, did my whole schooling here, and then came to Canada for university. I went to University of British Columbia. I studied philosophy mainly. I wanted to be a professor in philosophy.
Okay, what made you want to do that early on?
Yeah, so of all my kind of first year courses and first year, I don't know if you've had this experience, but in first year, people don't really know what they want to study. And so they take kind of a broad menu of courses. Philosophy really struck me as very interesting. And I've always kind of enjoyed that also in my previous, high school life. So I was really fascinated with philosophy, with argumentation, discussion, thinking about wide range of ideas, both morally, metaphysically. I always enjoyed discussing religion. Always fascinated by it. So that's kind of why I wanted to do that, and I want to become a professor in philosophy.
Interesting.
My family is partially academic, so my father was a professor in economics, and so I kind of tended towards the academic world anyway.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but then in my third year of university, I kind of became disenchanted with the whole idea of philosophy or academia.
Why is that?
More precisely, because I found it to be very political and very charged in certain ways. There wasn't a lot of good quality discussion going on. I felt. And also the school of philosophy that I really preferred, analytic philosophy, was for some reason very disfavored amongst all my peers. They all hated analytic. They wanted to do continental philosophy, which I didn't really like at all. So that's kind of two reasons why the whole idea didn't sit well with me to continue with philosophy. So then I thought what I wanted to do, and I essentially dived into computer science more because computers are another field that I find very fascinating, and there's actually an overlap with philosophy, and namely with logic. Kind of formal logic and computer science are very closely connected. So yeah, then I basically finished my schooling in computer science, went to some additional university courses at the University of Washington and Harvard for a summer, which was very worthwhile. And right after that, I didn't know what I wanted to do. On paper, I looked kind of bad because I had this half philosophy, half computer science degree. So it wasn't very appealing, I think, if I wanted to apply for kind of corporate jobs or anything like that. So luckily, my friend called me up and said, "Have you heard of crypto? Have you heard of Bitcoin?" And I said, "Yeah, I kind of heard of it, but I don't know much about it." So then he told me to download the app right now, the wallet, and he sent me some while I was on the call with him, and I sent him some back, and I was immediately hooked because I was in Europe and he was in North America at the time.
That's cool.
And kind of it blew my mind in terms of the possibilities of financial freedom and how easy it was to send money. If you have a lot of experience with the SWIFT system, the banking system, and sending money abroad, it's a nightmare. It's terrible. Why can't we send emails in a second anywhere in the world?
Yeah.
But we have to, pay $70 or so or more and wait 4 days to send some money. And sometimes the banks won't even do it. If you want to send money to Bangladesh, like good luck. It has to bounce through 5 different banks, and maybe they won't even allow it.
Wild.
So yeah, I fell in love with Bitcoin, and my friend and I, we knew that we wanted to do something with Bitcoin. We had no idea what, but we knew we wanted to do something. Um,
Okay. Keep
so
going.
I came back to Vancouver and immediately joined all kinds of like little crypto groups. There was a great kind of hacker space in Vancouver called Decontrol, um, and kind of a grungy underground anarchist hackerspace that
That's
was
awesome.
crypto focused, and a lot of big people in the crypto space have moved through there. Vitalik Buterin was there shortly before he launched Ethereum, um, and many others. So that was a great space to be in. They put on little educational seminars and just discussions and everything. I also joined the UBC Bitcoin Club,
Okay.
and I was recently reflecting on it, and a lot of people from the Bitcoin Club at UBC went on to really do great things in crypto. For instance, um, Crypto Kitties. I don't know if you're familiar
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
but some of the people who were involved in Crypto Kitties were involved with the UBC Bitcoin Club.
That's cool.
Um, a friend of mine who was involved in the Bitcoin Club recently won a big startup pitch competition, international pitch competition in Dubai.
Nice.
Um, Other people are having their own other startups, so it's really cool. Someone is working for Coinbase. I'm really kind of proud of that little crypto community at the UBC club. Anyway, um, my friend and I, we thought for a long time what we wanted to do, brainstormed a bunch, and we thought, well, it's a currency, so obviously we want to enable people to pay for goods and services with it. So let's design a little app
Okay.
that allows people to do that. And since I had just finished all kinds of courses on Java and programming, um, I thought I'll just start creating an Android application that allows you to. It was essentially a payment processor.
Okay.
And we talked to various businesses around Vancouver, and we said, "Would you do this?" And of course, if you talk to small business owners, often when you give them something that's free and might help their business, they're not going to say no.
Fair.
So a lot of them said yes, and let's try it. And then the problem that we faced was that no one was paying for crypto, or
Ah,
no one was paying with crypto for anything,
got you.
because um, first of all, almost nobody had crypto at the time. This was like early 2017,
Oh yeah, pretty early still.
and uh, and the other problem was that even the people who had crypto didn't want to pay for anything with crypto because they thought the price would go up, and so why would
Right.
you give away your crypto?
Right. Interesting. Okay, sure.
So, so we kind of shelved that idea. That was kind of our first failed idea.
Okay.
And then we pivoted as the crypto bubble in 2017 began rolling. We pivoted to just helping people get into crypto. Um, we helped them kind of download wallets. We helped them understand the space better. We gave educational talks and seminars, um, and and we also did a bunch of buying and selling of crypto to people kind of in the Vancouver community.
Okay. Interesting.
And then that went well for a while, but as the bubble kind of increased and got crazier, we soon noticed that people were asking for crypto who had really no business asking for crypto, like old ladies and people who had no idea what it was, but their nephew had told them to buy crypto or 0x token or whatever. Often we
Okay.
had never heard of these tokens before, and then people who didn't know how to use a laptop wanted to buy $100,000 worth of this stuff. So then
Ah,
we kind of felt this was getting too crazy. So let's get out of this game. It's kind of that story of when your hairdresser talks to you about the investment, then you know that investment is a bubble.
yeah, that's fair.
Mhm. I had a similar experience with a border guard, actually. Like I crossed the U.S.-Canadian border, and the border guard asked me
Okay.
what to do, um, and I said crypto, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm invested in so and so token," and that's when I knew to get out. Um, so the bubble burst, but right after the Bitcoin bubble, of course, we had the ICO bubble in 2018. So we pivoted to that. We helped businesses kind of design token architectures and design and consulted essentially on ICOs and various Ethereum based offerings. But it wasn't really what we wanted to do. It was, yeah, a lot of people did that at the time who were just generally in crypto, just because that's where the money was for that brief moment.
Right.
Um, but it wasn't very, satisfying or fulfilling or, you know. Um, So then the opportunity came along to do something in the analytics space. I don't know if you're familiar with the analytics space, but
Yeah.
essentially, crypto, like Bitcoin, is of course synonymous. So you don't really know who's sending transactions to who, but all the transactions are uh, um, transparent, so everyone can see every transaction that ever happened, right?
Right.
So then you can actually design software to use statistics and various heuristical methods to track transactions through the network and to group addresses together and to kind of see who is spending which money or what money is touching the dark markets, what money is maybe used for illicit financial operations, money laundering, these kinds of things. So governments, banks, financial institutions were more and more interested in this information, mainly probably in the private sector, mainly because they wanted to make sure to get the stamp of approval from a third party to say
Right.
that this crypto isn't being money laundered.
Right.
Um, so then North American companies were Chainalysis. They're kind of the biggest one in that space. Chainalysis, Coin, uh, what's Cipher Trace? Cipher Trace, I think it's called. There's a bunch. Crystal Blockchain in Europe. We had a connection in China to do the same thing in China. So
Oh, interesting.
we were one of those startups that got poached by the Chinese, and then we went over to China. They offered us a bunch of money. They raised like $1 million for us, and
Wow.
we just had to come over to China, to Shenzhen, and open an office, hire a bunch of Chinese developers, and build our product, and that's what we did. And
Interesting. Okay. So walk us through that experience. Like, was there a language barrier,
oh yeah,
cultural differences, and then just like how do you set up a business in a totally different country like that?
right, yeah. So I think a lot of people who are in a similar position will have experienced this when they have they're kind of young and they have a cool startup idea and it's very early stage,
Yeah.
and then one of these Chinese venture funds or maybe even just Chinese business people, they take notice or they just know you through a connection of a connection, and then they want to bring it over to China because they have connections in the Chinese market or in the Chinese party, in the Communist Party, and they think they can make a lot of money with it. And since we were young and hungry and poor, we of course went for it. Um, but kind of there were red flags from the beginning.
Okay.
Um,
What
I mean,
what were some of those red flags just for people if they're ever in a similar situation?
yeah, the red flags were that our particular Chinese partners, they were not very um, they weren't happy to pay us.
Ah,
They they often delayed payment for quite a while. It was always a struggle to get any kind of money out of them. And then when we came over to China, we realized that the whole structure of this deal was that they own 51% of it by law. That's necessary. The Chinese have to own 51% of it.
ah,
They controlled all the money. Um,
right.
and they essentially made all the decisions, even though they didn't really understand what the technology was or what we were trying to build. So, kind of from their perspective, they were these older businessmen um, who thought that we were just these young tech guys and had an idea, and they could just tell us to build it, and you know, um, they wouldn't really pay us, or they weren't happy to pay us, and then they wanted to probably sell it or do some deal with their other business partners in China or something like that. Um, so I think a lot, yeah. This I've talked to a bunch of people who've had similar experiences in China. Unfortunately, um, it often seems to go kind of like that.
Ah,
And
interesting. Okay.
then they also often didn't pay the Chinese developers. So they didn't just not pay us; they also didn't pay the developers.
Ah,
So after a while, it got pretty tense, and we left China. The project went on. We finished the first phase of the project as planned. At which point, the Chinese partners were supposed to raise more money for kind of the second stage of the project,
yeah,
but then coronavirus happened. COVID
right.
happened, and that kind of never went anywhere, and so the project kind of just died.
I
Um,
see.
but in China was interesting. The way they do business is you have to know people in the local party. Um,
Okay.
so during the day we were working in the office, and in the evenings we would go out with these local party representatives and
Interesting.
and they got blind drunk and never once talked about business during those outings. But it was kind of like a networking thing.
Okay.
And if they like you, and then they'll try to help you with the business stuff. That seems to be the way it works.
Interesting. That must have just been a fascinating experience.
Super fascinating. I mean, great learning experience.
Sure.
But one of the big lessons, of course, was that if you see red flags from the beginning,
Yeah.
don't assume that those red flags were just going to go away after a while, because that's what we kept telling ourselves. We kept telling ourselves, oh, once we did this, or once we finish phase 1, or once we do this or that, then suddenly it's going to be better. And the expectation that things would get better, that was just a wrong expectation, a false expectation.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. So we came back to Canada, and COVID was raging, and luckily, kind of in the year before, I had briefly worked on a project in Vancouver with a friend I met at Decontrol, actually.
Okay.
Which was launching the EOS mainnet. We were kind of interested in helping doing that and being an EOS block producing node. So we worked on that, and that's kind of how I developed kind of a working relationship with Chen, who is now my co-founder in EonLabs. I enjoyed working with him, and he was a brilliant software developer.
Okay.
And around the time when we got back from China, he called me up and he said, I've been working on this algorithmic trading system for crypto. Why don't you take a look at it? So I took a look at it, and it was pretty cool, but I was very skeptical. In fact, I've written articles prior to this. I've written articles about trading algorithms and how that I'm basically coming from a skeptic's point of view. I didn't think that pure technical analysis trading algorithms could reliably turn a profit in the markets. So
Okay.
I was very skeptical. But I looked at the algorithm. I looked at what it did. We put a bit of money in it, our own money. Kept developing it, and it kept working. So I was kind of proven wrong, I suppose. And that was April of 2020. So almost 2 years ago now. We kept putting money in, then opened it up to friends and family and kind of our network of investors. At some point, the amount of money in the system grew to the point where we had to make a decision about the legal structure of this whole thing, because we didn't want to have this liability or potential securities laws apply to us that we didn't know about. So we branched off. We basically said there's the software company, EonLabs, which is a research and development company. And then we'll partner with third-party financial institutions to actually own and operate the funds. And then we license the software to those funds. And that's kind of how we operate now. There's 2 structures right now. There's one in Canada, in Vancouver, and one in the British Virgin Isles, which is being set up right now. Those are 2 funds, and we essentially trade, or these funds trade with our algorithmic trading system. It's a high frequency futures trading system that does Bitcoin and Ethereum futures, and it's been doing very well. So we're pretty happy with it, and that's pretty much brings us to today.
Interesting. Okay. So how does somebody like myself then use your technology? I need to go to an institution that's already using your trading system. Is that how I understand this?
Yeah. So anyone who would want to invest in this kind of thing,
Yeah.
they would have to go to one of these funds and do all the proper onboarding to the fund, like the KYC stuff. And those funds are fully licensed financial institutions. So essentially, we unburdened ourselves from all that regulatory stuff so that we can focus on the software, which is what our strong suit is. So the financial world and financial regulations are really a pain to deal with.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, that makes sense. So I'm curious then, is there like a minimum that you need to put in with these institutions, or does it really depend on who the financial company is that you go to?
Yeah, it depends on the financial company. However, there are minimums, so this isn't necessarily for, the average person on the street.
Right.
Usually our minimums are somewhere around 30 or $40,000
Okay.
um, for those institutions. So it's not, yeah, it's not something for everybody. I mean, it is high risk. It's a high frequency quantitative trading system for cryptocurrency futures. I mean, that is a mouthful, but like it is a very high risk investment strategy. Um,
Yeah, that's fair. Well, crypto can go like Bitcoin can sometimes go up and down like 10 grand in a day.
Exactly, exactly. Um,
Fair enough.
the nice thing about our system is that we're uncorrelated with Bitcoin in general, um,
Right.
because we're market neutral, so we trade both long and short,
Okay.
which means that whether crypto goes up or down doesn't really matter to us, as long as there's sufficient volatility. It's good usually.
Got you. Okay.
Mhm.
So then how does block space play into this?
So Blockspace was the analytics company that went over to China.
Okay.
That was basically the first real company I founded with
Gotcha.
a former business partner of mine. We went our separate ways even before China. And then I came back from China, and now Blockspace is mainly consulting on certain blockchain projects. There was a supply chain project in Vancouver, but
Okay.
my main focus is on EonLabs and the trading algorithms. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. So I want to step back a little bit for people that don't understand what cryptocurrency is or even trading. How do you explain it to people that don't understand it?
Yeah. Um, well, the blockchain. Where to start?
It's challenging, right?
Yeah, so there's kind of various ways in which you can approach this explanation. There's kind of the way that makes people understand what blockchain technology is and what the whole reason for Bitcoin's existence is.
Mhm.
And then there's kind of a way in which you can explain it without really going into the fundamentals of it by just saying essentially it's some sort of digital asset. It has limited supply, and uh, it you can send it all over the world. It's independent of governments, and there's no um, financial institution that controls it, so to speak, right?
Right.
But that kind of when people talk like that, I find it always kind of misses the point of what it really is, um, namely a solution to a problem that was a problem of distributed consensus that was posed, I think, in the 1980s and was considered unsolvable until 2008 when Satoshi Nakamoto published this 8-page paper anonymously and proposed a solution, and that solution is Bitcoin.
Right.
So what it is really is it, it creates a network of nodes or participants really um, that can all agree on a state of information without there being a boss. And that's actually very, very difficult to do from a computer science and mathematics point of view, because you have a problem of infinite regress um, with, who's to say what's the correct state of information. And the state of information here is really arbitrary. The state of information could be, transactional information. It could be general code like in Ethereum, or it could be, what the weather is. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that there's consensus on what the state of information is. And so Bitcoin combined several technologies that kind of already existed into this new thing, this new data structure called the blockchain. Um, and among these innovations are a proof of work, um, and the whole idea of deterministically creating um, a chain of contributions to the network, to the data structure. So yeah, I don't know how technical you want to go here, but
Sure. No, I think that makes sense. I think that's a good explanation of it. So I'm curious then, how do you see the future of crypto playing out? Because I honestly think that it's probably going to be very much relevant, and people are going to probably use it almost daily within 3 to 5 years. Like, I'm talking the general public. I know people are using it daily
Mhm.
now, and there, was it like one country just
El
took like,
Salvador. Yeah.
yeah, it was basically you can use it everywhere. So it's
Mhm.
coming. It's already here, really.
Yeah, yeah, and there's actually a big debate for the last few years. There's been a big debate in the Bitcoin community. What exactly Bitcoin is? Is it a currency? Is it some sort of digital asset? Is it something else? Um, I kind of fall on the side of saying that it's not a currency because it doesn't fulfill one of the main requirements of a currency, which is price stability or some kind of price stability that allows people to do commerce in a way that they can, reasonably make assumptions about the next couple of months and paying their employees and paying for, supplies and these kinds of things.
Got you.
Um,
Okay.
so I don't think it's really a currency. So the word cryptocurrency is a bit of a misnomer. However, there are currencies in the cryptocurrency space, um, namely stable coins. So those coins are essentially like Bitcoin or Ethereum, but they don't have the price instability. Their value is pegged to the US dollar, for instance, or the euro. Um, and I really believe in the future of stable coins as currency. Um,
Got it.
in
Okay.
terms of in terms of what Bitcoin might be in the future, it might prove to be a kind of gold standard. It might prove to be a kind of um, anchor of value for a lot of other stuff that might happen in the crypto space. For instance, stablecoins. Um, and it certainly is also my friend used to say a financial instrument of last resort for people who just don't have banks, don't have access to any kind of stable financial system or reliable currency, like in like Venezuela, for instance. Um, and in those places, Bitcoin as a currency might make more sense than in the Western world, where typically we have pretty good banking, except if you do, international wire transfers and stuff like that. That kind of sucks. But yeah, another interesting philosophical aspect and political aspect, I suppose, is the the general trend of technology is that of centralization.
Okay.
Um, so Peter Thiel famously said, "All artificial intelligence is totalitarian." What that means is you're more and more you're relying on artificial intelligence, which relies on huge amounts of data that is concentrated in fewer and fewer companies and fewer hands, and allows and the conclusions reached by these machine learning algorithms um, control our lives to a greater and greater degree. Plus, there's more and more censorship, there's more and more control, there's more and more our data being sold or being used without our consent or knowledge. So everything in technology seems to have a centralizing totalitarian trend, except for blockchain and cryptocurrency. That's kind of like the counter trend, and that's kind of fascinating in itself, because the world of technology uh, has this feature that tends towards centralization because there is no marginal cost of growth or expansion. So if you're selling cars, for instance, or manufacturing cars or manufacturing anything really, then there's a limit, first of all, to how much you can manufacture, and each additional unit you manufacture costs you a certain amount of money. And building another factory in another town or in another country is very expensive, or shipping
Right.
all that stuff over there is very expensive. But with technology, you don't have any of these limitations. You can essentially just have one Facebook, you can have one Google, you can have one Twitter. You don't need a Twitter or a Facebook or a Google in every town or in every country. So that alone is kind of a dangerous um, uh, just fact of life, I suppose. It's a dangerous mm, trend towards concentrating wealth and power and information in fewer and fewer companies and hands. And more people are suggesting that governments aren't really the powerful ones. It's Google and Facebook and
Totally.
these tech giants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So cryptocurrency might be a light in the dark when it comes to that kind of thing, because it truly empowers the individual to take responsibility of their own finances and to actually own something themselves and not to have to trust anybody, um, and at the same time be private and anonymous to a reasonable degree.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. It is quite fascinating, and it does kind of level the playing field a little bit. And I am super fascinated to know where this goes long term. But I'm curious to go back to the trading platform a little bit.
Mhm.
How does what you just outlined, I guess, like, structure your roadmap of what you guys are trying to do with the trading software? Are you guys have your own thing? Are you really following what's kind of happening in the, like, in the space, or how does that kind of play into all of this?
Yeah, so we are very, very interested in decentralized finance and expanding our operations into the decentralized finance world. Right now, our system relies on centralized exchanges,
Okay,
um, and that's kind of where most of the volume is. But last year, decentralized finance really blew up, and
totally.
I'm a huge fan of it because essentially it allows people to cut out the middleman of the exchange and just never give up custody of their own funds and only interact with smart contracts rather than having to interact with companies. Um, and if we extrapolate that idea further into the future, I think company structures might be more and more replaced by jurisdictionless, decentralized autonomous organizations. I think that's kind of where at least one future of the economy lies, of the digital economy at least, is organizations that exist everywhere at once. They don't have an office necessarily. They don't have a jurisdiction. They're not registered anywhere, and they're fundamentally indestructible. And but they can engage in real actions, and they can actually do things and produce products and vote on. They can have a board of directors and all this kind of stuff, anonymous even if they want to, and they can
Interesting.
create digital products. And so as our lives move more and more into the digital space, as we're seeing right now, and as we've seen through the pandemic, people spend more and more time online. The focus of life in general is shifting into the digital world. Um, and I think cryptocurrency, blockchain, NFTs, decentralized finance, these will all be the backbone of a more and more mature digital space that becomes more than just a website or a browser or something like that. It becomes a true environment where people can spend most of their lives and have most of their experiences. There's, of course, a certain interface problem right now because right now we interface with these things through computer screens,
Yeah.
and virtual reality just hasn't gotten that far yet. But mm, those are kind of different problems that perhaps Elon Musk is working on somewhere.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So I'm curious then, how is what you guys are building? Open source is the wrong way, but, like, can I, as a third party software developer, connect to what you guys are doing from an API, or actually build software on top of your platform? Is that something I can do now or will be able to do in the future?
um, Probably not. No.
Okay.
Because with the current, so what EonLabs does is essentially it creates ways to maximize the profit that can be made from excitement in the crypto space from a financial
Ah,
point of view, right?
okay.
So it's essentially, think of it as a financial company or a company that supplies services to financial companies. Um,
Okay.
so we can talk all day about the philosophy of blockchain and the politics of it and the very interesting technological developments that happen.
Yeah.
Um, but those are perhaps a slightly different topic than what we do as a company at the moment. Yes.
Got you. Okay.
Mhm.
And then, but so even the partners that are using your platform, they're not developing on top of it then?
No, no.
Okay, okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so how does blockchain play into all this, or does it at all?
In terms of what we do?
Yeah, like, does it are you guys, like is the underlying technology built on blockchain or no?
Not directly, but the 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 instruments that we trade
Okay,
are, cryptocurrencies, and their derivatives. So in that sense, it's connected to blockchain because we do trade Bitcoin and Ethereum and Bitcoin
right,
futures
okay,
and Ethereum futures and this kind of thing, right?
right.
Um, so that in that sense, it's cryptocurrency related, yes.
Got you. Okay.
But like there are these different kind of categories and these different worlds, I suppose. There's the world of people creating decentralized applications. There's the world of, the philosophy of it all, and then there's also just the financial world. And most of the crazy volatility in the Bitcoin space and all that, that's all based on the financial world being speculative and a lot of people just buying and selling based on the idea that they want to make money, um, and they want to get rich off of crypto, or they're just playing the markets. So that's kind of its whole a whole different world as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It also seems fascinating to me that, like, we all know that, like, certain people tweet something and there's all the rage for a certain type of currency for, a few days, and it's interesting how anybody with some sort of status can affect the price of some of these coins almost instantly.
Yeah, and most famously, of course, Elon Musk uh, has tweeted some things or said some things, and that has had a huge implication price wise.
Totally.
And in the beginning, people liked that because he was drawing attention to the crypto space.
Right.
But now I think most people are kind of just annoyed with it because it seems unreasonable for one person to have that kind of market moving power.
Right.
Um, and also the things he's promoting are, well, I don't want to be elitist, but they're not necessarily the things that would be considered serious, like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu and these kind of meme coins. Um,
Yeah.
they're fun and everything, but what has Elon Musk to do with these kind of things, and why is that important for, the future of the financial system or anything? So most people I think that he should probably stop doing that kind of thing.
Interesting. No, I yeah, it's interesting, right? So I'm curious if people are looking to get into the crypto space, what advice do you give them? And is there any resources or anything out there that you suggest for them to just get a basic understanding and maybe start buying some coins?
Yeah. So generally, I would suggest that people read the Bitcoin white paper because all of blockchain and all of cryptocurrency is based on that.
Right.
So if you understand the ideas of to kind of described there and the problems that are being solved there, you're already pretty well off in terms of knowledge. And then there's some great educators in the space. I mean, honestly, 4 or 5 years ago, it was more difficult to find really good educators and sources of information. And we would always suggest Andreas Antonopoulos, who was kind of a big guru of Bitcoin in the early days.
Yeah.
Um, he wrote a bunch of books and gave talks and everything. But these days, honestly, YouTube, and you can basically learn anything you want on YouTube as long as you steer clear from the day trading get rich quick YouTube channels.
Fair
Those
enough.
typically are very educational.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, and it's well, I guess, like, it's obviously happened to a small amount of people, and everybody's hoping that it can happen to them right away, right? By
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
these things with crypto. And I guess you could if you get kind of really lucky, but I don't know. It
I
seems like
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
it's I say steer clear of the get rich quick scheme people, but at the same time, of course, it isn't like the stock market and isn't like traditional assets. It has experienced enormous growth, and the space is continually experiencing enormous growth. I mean, it's it's the I think Bitcoin didn't Wells Fargo or J.P. Morgan say something like it's the asset of the asset of the decade, and
Yes.
I mean it's just grown like crazy, and it keeps growing. I'm always shocked at the growth of the space. A couple of years ago, almost nobody was invested in Bitcoin or in crypto or anything like that. Now, basically everybody is. So I
Yeah.
just saw a survey of investors, um, I think in Europe, and something like 60 or 70% of accredited investors in Europe already had some crypto.
Interesting.
When I travel around and I talk to people, basically everybody is already invested in crypto or was at least played with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And completely random people just suddenly say, "Oh, you're in crypto? What do you think of this coin or that coin? Or I bought a bunch of Doge and I made money off of it, or like I lost a lot of money on Doge." So like basically everybody is either getting into it, has gotten into it, or has experimented with it, and that's such a huge difference from just 3 years ago. And if we think just how immature the space still is, that is pretty fascinating. So I don't think the rise of crypto will stop anytime soon. That's not to say that the prices will only go up, but I think in the long run, um, it's looking pretty positive
Yeah.
compared to other asset classes you could be investing in.
No, that's fair. What's your thoughts on NFTs? Do you think there or some variation of that is going to be the future of digital assets?
Yeah, so NFTs are interesting. I mentioned CryptoKitties earlier. They were pretty much the first. I mean, they weren't exactly the first to use this non-fungible token standard. I believe it's ERC 721, if I'm not mistaken. But they were the first to kind of popularize it.
Yeah, that
Mm,
makes sense.
And it kind of went quiet after a while. But then after decentralized finance took off, um, NFTs just exploded all over the place, and people um, attached artworks and music and intellectual property and all that kind of stuff. They just attached to tokens and to more easily buy and sell it and move it around. And to a lot of people, I think it's a weird or nonsensical idea that people would spend millions and millions of dollars on a JPEG file. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
but I think it's an important stepping stone in the movement from real world into digital world, where we get used to the idea that things can exist only digitally and yet still have real value. And the important thing here is that those NFTs actually do have some kind of real value because their existence isn't dependent on some company, or their existence isn't dependent on you know some computer having the file on them. um, their existence is kind of independent of those things. It's a more objective existence than a lot of other digital things that existed before NFTs. So it's kind of a fascinating topic in itself. You can make the argument that digital art, NFTs, and this kind of thing is in a bit of a bubble where it's just ridiculous that pictures of monkeys are selling for millions of dollars. But then look at the art world in general, and you'll scratch your head anyway. So um,
Y-
it's not that different, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's kind of fascinating. I also think that we're just at the tip of the iceberg of the creative ways people that we're going to see people use the NFT technology, from concerts to digital assets that aren't even created yet, or just being able to, like, just the scalper thing with tickets.
Yeah,
Just like there'll be a lot of things that it adds some security around certain things, and for sure that what you're buying, if it's digital, is the original, right?
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's the big thing that a lot of people don't realize. It's like, well, okay, sure, you could argue that that picture wasn't worth $1 million, but if you can prove that you own the original, just
mm,
like a painting, whether it's digital or physical, like that's worth money. It's all the replicas that aren't worth very much money.
exactly. And think of if we look into the future a little bit, think of science fiction books and movies like Ready
Yeah,
Player One,
totally.
um, where these people go into this virtual world and experience like a whole second life in this virtual world.
Yeah.
The flaw with a lot of those science fiction scenarios is that those virtual worlds, they're controlled by a single company, and they just run on company servers.
Right.
And that kind of strikes me as unrealistic, because if that company goes bankrupt, or the government seizes those servers, or something happens, then that entire virtual world, where people spend a lot of time and effort and money and all that all just vanishes. And a good example, of course, is World of Warcraft, or any of these kind of virtual
Totally.
world games,
Yep.
where people spend millions and millions of hours and effort on the auction house, and farming gold, and doing all these things, and equipping their characters with the best equipment. But if Blizzard suddenly decides, that's the company that develops World of Warcraft, of course. If Blizzard suddenly decides to cut funding for World of Warcraft, or just shut down the servers, then all of that is just erased. And now just introduce NFTs and blockchain technology to those kinds of virtual world scenarios, where everything you do in the virtual world actually creates lasting value that is independent of Blizzard servers, that's independent of any of these gaming company servers. And suddenly the incentives to actually create something in these virtual worlds that has lasting value and real world value are much greater, and more people will migrate into the space and try to create something, and offer their services, offer their products digitally, and all this kind of thing. So kind of the rise of NFTs, I think, to me, signals that kind of development, where we will really start getting into the economics of virtual worlds on a day-to-day basis. And when people talk about, when Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about whether we are in a simulation or not, the fact is, we're probably not in a simulation right now, or at least it's 50-50, but we will create simulations to go into, and those simulations will have to be based on something like decentralized technology in order for them to have a sufficient realness to create the economic incentives for people to actually populate that space and do things there that are worthwhile.
No, that's actually really interesting. But sadly, we're out of time. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about EonLabs and Blockspace, and any other links you want to mention?
Yeah, EonLabs, that's just the website, eonlabs.com. Not much to look at. Our business is not necessarily consumer facing.
Sure.
It's our clients are hedge funds, essentially. We've written a bunch of articles on blockchain technology and the implications of various things. There's a bunch of stuff on my Medium, if people are interested in that. And yeah, I keep publishing sometimes. I should do it more, but
You're a busy guy.
yeah.
Very cool, Victor. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time in your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Have a good day. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com, and keep building the future.